Moving on to part 2 of this lecture on Between Rowdies and Rasikas, Rethinking Fan Activity in Indian Film Culture. In this second part, we'll be discussing the second and the third parts of the essay. The second part of this chapter is titled Beyond the Cinema Hall, Reconceptualizing Publicness and the Fan. Now, in this part, Punatambekar explores the fascinating world of fan communities in Indian cinema. He discusses how they interact with media and shape cultural identities. Here, we also see challenging views about traditional fans and their activities. So, he begins the section by citing K. Shivatambi. Shivatambi or Karthikeshu Shivatambi was a Tamil scholar from Sri Lanka. Shivatambi had highlighted that cinema halls in India were unique public places. Cinema halls in India were unique public spaces, and people from all backgrounds could gather at the cinema hall based on their purchasing power and not based on their hierarchy. That means if they had the money to buy the ticket, they can go and watch a film. It was not based on caste or creed or any other distinctions. So he states, this is a quote that is by Shivatambi and is used by Punatambekar as the opening of the second section. It reads like this. The cinema hall was the first performance center in which all Tamils sat under the same roof. The basis of the seating is not on the hierarchic position of the patron, but essentially on his purchasing power. If he cannot afford paying the higher rate, he has either to keep away from the performance or be with all and sundry. So many later critics like S.V. Srinivas, Professor S.V. Srinivas, they have suggested this democratic possibilities of cinema. This meant that everyone, regardless of background, could sit together under one roof to watch films. So Srinivas also highlights Shivatambi's ideas about the democratic potential of cinema. He supports Shivatambi's claim and states that this formulation can be read as pointing to the democratic possibilities of cinema. So despite some rules about where different classes of seats were located, like Gandhi class or dress circle, cinema halls represented a new kind of public institution in India. And this concept challenged traditional social divisions by allowing people with varying incomes to share a common experience. Next, he talks about the scholarly approaches to cinema's publicness. That means how scholars have explored cinema's interaction with public life. See, he identifies 5 approaches to study how scholars have explored cinema and its interaction with public life. One is ideological production. That means how films contribute to shaping political and social ideologies. Films influence us heavily in shaping our political, social, cultural ideologies, right? So that is one approach or one way through which cinema interacts with public life. Second is social history. And studying popular films, we get a reflection of the social history. We may not be aware of our state history or national history at length. Okay, but when we see historical dramas, historical films, we get to know more about the historical past or that historical consciousness regarding our nation. So that is the second way of cinema interacting with public life. Third is spectatorship and democracy. And it examines how audience interact with films and the democratic implications of these interactions. We may be heavily influenced, the audience may be heavily influenced by some aspect of films. It may be the theme, it may be the hero's approach, it can be the storyline, it can be with a message that is conveyed, it can be the dressing styles, the fashion, etc. Right? So it is not that it is influencing a section, but it makes an impact on everybody. We all view the film, right? So it creates an impact on the whole, and it will impact our outlook of life. So that is the third approach. Fourth is censorship, understanding how regulations affect what films can show and how they are received. We have this censor board. They may not permit the screening of some scenes because it may have some political incorrectness, or it may affect a sect, it may affect a gender, so on and so forth. So this sort of censorship also affects film, its viewership, and how it impacts social ideologies. Okay, and last is stardom, analyzing the cult of celebrity and its impact on cinema's cultural influence. Stardom or fandom, of course, has a high impact on cinema. So, whenever a film is during its post production stage, whenever a film is getting ready to be screened, it is the hero or that celebrity or that actor or that person with stardom, he or she or their fandom will be used for distribution purposes to create far reaching effects on the audience. They are actually used as advertising materials, as commodities to sell the product called film, right? So all these factors affect cinema's publicness, the ideological production, like how political and social ideologies are formed, then the social history, cinema giving us a reflection of the past, then spectatorship and democracy, seeing how audience interact with the films, and the democratic aspect that film caters to all. Then the censorship aspects, how these regulations affect the films as well as the spectators. And then finally, stardom, the celebrity status, and its impact on cinema's cultural influence. So these are the scholarly approaches that Vinatambekar talks about. But Vinatambekar notes that while these areas have been extensively studied, fan practices have often been neglected until recent years. And most research focused on how films influence society and not on how fans engage with films. So, recently we have some pioneering studies on fan associations. One is by Professor S.V. Srinivas. He has explored fan associations in Andhra Pradesh, and he shows how they merge politics and social activities like charity work and blood donation campaigns. Then we have another scholar who studied about this fan activity, that is S. Dickey. And she has even written a book based on this, Cinema and the Urban Poor in South India. Now, in this work, she primarily focuses on fan activity in Tamil Nadu, and that too, particularly among lower caste male youth who gather in public spaces like street corners and tea shops. So, her study, basically her ethnographic study, highlights how such people or how such fans they organize around their admiration for film stars. Mostly the film stars in Tamil Nadu, their fan base consists of people belonging to this section, that lower class male youth who gather in public spaces like street corners and tea shops. Okay. But Punatambekar notes that there is a limitation in understanding such fan activity, especially Dickey's understanding or Dickey's research primarily focused on visible public forms of fan activity. There is another level of fan activity that is happening, like online communities, private interactions, etc., which are less obvious. So, such fan engagement is not discussed in her research. So that is considered as a limitation by Punatambekar. So what all this type of analysis and studies brings forth is that cinema not only entertains, but it also serves as a catalyst for public interaction and cultural expression. The role of fans, it is historically underexplored. And this is crucial in shaping how films are received and interpreted in society. Fans have a big role uh, in which a film is accepted. It is not only the production team, it is not only the actors, it is not only the people who are directly involved in the movie, be it the technicians, be it the actors, be it the other crew who are responsible for the film becoming a hit. It's not only that, the that is also associated to the fan activity. That is what the chapter is trying to convey. Next, Punatambekar draws insights from Srinivas analysis of fan activity in Andhra Pradesh. Now, S.V. Srinivas, in his study of the Telugu film industry in Andhra Pradesh, he argues that fan activity revolves around a complex interplay of devotion and defiance. So there are two aspects involved in that fan activity or fan devotion. What is that? One is devotion and the second is defiance. Devotion refers to the fans having a strong emotional attachment to film stars. They can, some even go to the extent of considering them as gods. For example, Chiranjeevi, Rajinikanth, etc. And the second aspect is defiance. That is, they defy the industry's control over star images, or they challenge the industry's control. For them, the star is the greatest, not the industry. Okay, the star is above the industry according to them. So they challenge the industry's control, industrial rules and regulations to control the star images. Then he states that there is also a political dimension for these fan associations. So that's why he says that fan clubs are not just about entertainment, but they are politically significant. They are linked to broader social movements. For example, advocating for the rights of marginalized groups like Dalits. So this makes fan activities in Andhra Pradesh a form of political engagement centered around regional and linguistic identities. And then he emphasizes that fan activity is political because it involves some rights, which the fans call spectatorial rights. Now, what is spectatorial rights? This term refers to fans' expectations that films and stars should cater to their preferences and demands. Okay, their preferences, their interests, their dreams and fantasies about their stars, that should be considered, that should be fulfilled through the films. For example, stars like Chiranjeevi and Rajinikanth, they directly interact with audiences through their performances, and they acknowledge and respond to fan expectations. So this is how Srinivas analyzes that fan activity, especially in the Telugu industry. But he finds that there are some limitations to his analysis because, just like Dickey, he also predominantly focuses on the visible forms of fan activity, that is within cinema halls, etc. So he calls for further exploration into other forms of fan engagement, that is something beyond the cinema halls, that like online platforms, etc. Okay. So secondly, he also understands that there is another challenge, that is, you have fans in different regions and cultural contexts, right? We have diaspora, we have Indians residing in other countries, we have Tamilians, but they also may be regular viewers of films. There will be fans of Indian superstars, etc. So, but their expectations and their modes of engagement with films and actors will be different. But that is not discussed in his study. So, that also is found as a limitation of his study. So, here Punatambekar tries to show through the study of Srinivasa's analysis that there are important avenues for understanding fan culture and its political dimensions. So there is a need to expand this research further. Next, Punatambekar questions this traditional focus on cinema halls and political parties as primary. Okay, mostly it is the cinema halls and political parties. Uh, these are the spaces where we usually or traditionally see forms of fan activity. But and most studies are also focusing on these sections or these spaces. So Punatambekar says that we should expand this framework. We should now include new media platforms also. It is not only the cinema hall and political parties where fan activity is seen and studied, but we should expand this research on fan studies to other media platforms like radio, television, internet, cell phone networks, etc. So these platforms play crucial roles in shaping the publicness of cinema. Okay, so by that way, we engage with fans beyond the physical cinema spaces and we get to know more about the culture. He even cites an example to this point. He mentions a fan named Rameshwar Prasad Bhanwal, and he was from Jumri Tilaya from in Bihar. That's the place name. He sent thousands of request cards requesting songs to radio stations, particularly to radio shows like Vinaka Geetmala on Radio Ceylon. So his actions highlight how film music enthusiasts engage with media beyond the cinema hall. He's a person who's a fan of music. So in studies by Srinivas or Dickey, such fan activity is not discussed. They discuss only fan activity primarily seen in political field or in cinema hall, in theaters. But there are other fan activities also happening. And one example is a fan sending, a music enthusiast sending thousands and thousands of request cards to a radio station. Such activity, that is also a fan activity that is beyond the cinema hall. Okay. So now fan engagement spans multiple media platforms like this. And it challenges the view that fan culture is confined to cinema halls or political spaces. Okay. And next, Punita Baker talks about the perceptions and representations of fans. How are they perceived? How are fans perceived and represented normally? There is usually a stereotypical portrayal of fans. Fans are portrayed as obsessive, they are mostly male, they are from working class backgrounds, and they are rowdy type. And you associate, for example, such fans to Rajinikanth, Chiranjeevi, etc. And it notes that behaviors like loud cheering, throwing papers, throwing notes, public celebrations, pouring milk through the cutout of their favorite actors. So, all this are often sensationalized and marginalized in public discourse. We don't talk about uh, such activities in scholarly discussion. All such activities are not uh, discussed. We consider them as rowdy acts, very obsessive acts. Okay, so this is that negative perception of fans or that stereotypical perception of fans that we have, and we consider these type of fans or this image of fans as the rowdy fans. But we have other fans as well, positive ones. You see, you go to a classical music concert or you watch a classical dance performance. the audience there, they are considered as very composed, very disciplined, very calm. They enjoy it. They enjoy the art that is displayed before them in a very calm and composed way. No action, no drama, nothing. So they are called the Rasikas, and they give a positive uh, image of the fans. They are also fans, but they Rasikiyana, enjoy it. Okay, so this is a dichotomy that also shows the broader societal norms and class distinctions in how we consume culture. Now, other than these rowdies and rasikas, we also have another type of fan image, like English speaking middle and upper middle class individuals who engage with cinema through magazines like Filmfare, uh, people who communicate in channels like channel V channel and MTV. So these fans, they also represent a fan culture that extend beyond these traditional boundaries. Okay, that is also another type of fan culture. So what Punatambekar tries to convey is that fandom, it's not a fixed identity. Rather, it is a dynamic construct, and it is influenced by uh, the culture, the geographical aspects, the regional aspects, uh, political aspects, the industry practices, the interaction with fan communities, the content, uh, be it cinema, music, whatever. So, all this influences that fan activity or that fan identity, right? So, altogether, he suggests that there needs to be a paradigm shift in understanding and studying fan culture. We should move beyond traditional boundaries of cinema halls and political spaces. And we should have a more inclusive approach that recognizes different types of fan activity, that recognizes different media technologies and platforms. So, all this is important in the discussion of fan practices and fan identities. In the third and last segment of this essay, he concludes and summarizes all the key points discussed in this whole chapter. So, as a starting point, he begins by discussing the fan community around A.R. Rahman, the famous film music director, and he discusses how Rahman's fan community has carved a niche for themselves. Secondly, he talks about cinema's publicness. For that, he looks at how people experience cinema in different ways. And so, one way of looking at cinema is not just through the films themselves, but also through the lens of fan interactions. Thirdly, he states that most scholarly work on fan activity comes from the Anglo American context. They consider fans as both infringers. Infringers means people who break the rules, people who break the stereotypes, as well as active participants who contribute to media culture. Next, he states that Indian cinema is not confined to India but spans across the world. And we have now shows, then CDs, satellite TV, internet portals, all this have expanded the global reach of Indian cinema. And so, fan communities are also spanning across the world. And different fan communities have different ways of expressing their fandom. So, recognizing such transnational fan communities helps us understand how media circulate globally and attach to different aspirations. And A.R. Rahman fan community is one such example of transnational fan communities. So, such communities helps us see Bollywood as a global culture industry. So, that is all this chapter is all about. Hope you all understood. Thank you.